We have earthquakes being deleted, and a lot of you are asking what is happening on the West Coast right now. And we're here to get deeper into that, showing you after this 5.9 was announced. Let's look at the official side of the story, and then let's get into everything else eyewitnesses are saying and some other things that are occurring.
So if you have the My Shake app, you may have gotten an alert just around the 8 o'clock hour, specifically around 8:06, that there was an earthquake that occurred just outside of the town of Dayton in Nevada. And for some folks even in the foothills around our region, reported that there was potentially some shaking. Now, what happened in this event is unfortunately with this trigger sensors that are happening and all the areas where we have most of the fault lines, sometimes a sensor can go off. And until it's reviewed by a seismologist with the USGS, sometimes that information can be erroneous. And in this situation, unfortunately, after a seismologist reviewed this event, they determined that.
So yeah, people woke up and they had this happen. We also have these king tides, showing up at pretty much around the same timeline where we're going to get into that because as the king tides are showing up, we have this anomalous energy coming, this magnetic energy, and Washington is unveiling this new tsunami strategy plan. And that's because they don't really have the warnings they used to have. So we're going to be looking down in the chat here and seeing what you're saying in local areas across Washington, across California, across Oregon, across all these areas and zones, and even up to Alaska and Canada that is having these situations happen. Now, let's investigate the situation here. So, what are people saying about this event? And when I looked into it, there is some interesting things that people are saying. But for one, this lady gives us really insight about, okay, if this really happened, I don't think she would be saying this.
So I just got alert. I slept through this somehow.
So that right there tells me you're not sleeping through no 5.9. You gonna get your butt up because it's gonna be rattling and shaking. So you ain't gonna be having your butt sleep during that time. But moving further into it, here's December 4th today. We can look at the seismic graph. There is no vibration. There is no up and down movement on here. So there supposedly wasn't anything seismically actually occurring at this time. Now, the question people have is, okay, was there something underground happening? And I did a lot of research. I looked into that and I didn't see anything happening underground. But how will we know 100% there's not anything happening underground? But what makes this a little more strange, we'll get into it, is this is not the only location in the last few days that's had seismic-like events. So this was a deleted quake. Officially, that's what's come out. But there's been other areas that has not been deleted, and we'll be getting into that here to show you in just a second. But this is also a repeated cycle in history, which is pretty interesting as well. And that's why you need to listen to what this woman says here next.
A short while ago, USGS issued an alert for a 5.9 magnitude earthquake in Dayton, Nevada. Dayton is not far from Reno and Carson City. It turns out it was a false alarm, but it caught my attention, so I had to dive into the birth chart for Dayton. Dayton was born in late 1861. In 1861, that is when Neptune had dipped into Aries, and then it went back into Pisces. It was doing exactly what it's doing right now, and it only does that every 165 years. All right, why is that important? Well, right now, this is all happening under a super full moon in Gemini, and Dayton was born with Uranus in Gemini at the exact point that the full moon is going to hit its peak. All right, additionally, this reminds me that history repeats itself. It absolutely does, and we will soon see more evidence of that. And with regards to what happened in the 1860s, things like the Great California Flood, the Gold Rush, the Civil War.
So the moon alignment with this right now is very much in alignment with the past history effects. And the question is, are we about to enter something based off of this situation? Because right now you can see tonight the moon is closer to Earth than any other time. And like we said, the king tides have been super dramatic along San Francisco Bay Area shoreline because of this magnetic energy. At the same time, we got the solar storm energy coming in as well. Take a look at these waves though, and pretty much how big they were getting. Okay, so if you were in the area, I want you to let me know something because this was one of the things that was a strange event that wasn't talked about. And we'll get into the magnetic energy here in just a second. So, sure, this thing was deleted today. Sure. Yeah, that happened. But a few days ago, before this happened, you can take a look on screen. December 3rd, Utah had a possible earthquake shaking event happen. And there was never any reports afterwards by USGS about this, but possible seismic-like event was reported across St. George, Utah, USA on December 2nd at first, and then it went into the 3rd because it was a little bit late as the data came in to be reported. So what is happening with all this shaking? And this is not even popping up on USGS radar. So if you're in Utah, let us know what you felt. And I've already confirmed that this 5.9 didn't happen. But if there is some anomalous that we need to know, if you're in that area, you're in Reno, Nevada, you're in Dayton, Dayton area of Nevada, which is where this happened, let us know because we'll be looking through the chat section to find out exactly what you're seeing. Now, if we look at this same area, but kind of like a little bit further left. So California was alerted as well. They got alerts and they're like, well, why are we getting alerts? This was in uh Nevada, was it? Yeah, Nevada. There we go. Nevada can't even say. All right, let's go right here. Mysterious loud booms. Okay, this was talked about a little bit further back, right? And the lady reported something that was interesting because people say, hey, was it underground? What are they doing there? Is there something happening there? Good question. Because when she described this of what was happening and the area she's describing, we got to put it up on map. We got to show you because once you hear what she says, you need to know exactly where it's at. All right. So this is where it's reported at. Residents in the area of Killeen, Oak Hills, Baldy, Mesa, Daily Press, and this was a while back. Loud boom shook property, scared horses, and made dogs howl. So check it out, though. It's just not any report. High desert residents of over 60 years, Susan Moore, said she's familiar with the sound of fireworks, thunder, gunshots, sonic booms. These loud booms weren't any of those things, Moore told the Daily Press. It felt like sound waves were penetrating the air and ground. Just weird. Miguel Sanchez, who lives near Highway 395, said that the loud booms went off every couple of hours and scared his wife and children and dogs. I mean, what does that sound like to y'all? What does it sound like? Because this is the situations that right now we have to question while these events are taking place. Like, was there some activity occurring underground? That's a big question here. Again, this was the area on map specifically where they were at in California when they were hearing this. So same week, all this comes out, everybody. Same exact week, same day, as a matter of fact. We have them in Washington now saying, oh, we're now going to unveil a new tsunami strategy plan in anticipation of the big one. This is December 4th, 2025. So this is just coming out right now. And why is that? That's because we told you about how they're going to shut off the sirens and stuff like that, the tsunami sirens. So apparently now Washington, let's show you where they're saying, in Oregon, they're saying, wait a minute. In Oregon, we might just go ahead and still use those warnings. So Oregon is saying, even though the tsunami warnings was continuing, this was despite the federal cuts, they would continue theirs. Washington did not say that, however. They said tsunami warnings for Washington coast may be delayed. That's why you here in the chat are important to let us know, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Because people were talking about how these waves are getting big. I just believe they're king tides, and it's because the moon is coming in, and we do see the waves start to come up during that time. But if you see something outside of what I'm saying, this chat right here is going to be very important. You look through the comments, you listen to people here because they've alerted us of some very, very life-saving things because they're very much into everything that's happening. Now we need to read into this plan that they're doing for the big one, because this is very important here to see what the strategy is now. So moving into it, it says, In contrast, a distant Alaska tsunami will likely result in less than 2 feet inundation, primarily affecting maritime infrastructure with 4.5 to 5 hours of initial quake. So that's how much time you got. It's not going to be much. The inundation obviously is just coming in still slowly as things start to happen. And these waves that you're seeing right here, they happen pretty fast. The king tides. It would basically occur over hours of a period of time coming from Alaska. And that's why they're saying from Alaska, they're looking at how the glaciers is melting and everything else is happening. So let's get back into everything else they're saying though. So the port of Angeles has already implemented several mitigation measures, such as burying fuel tanks underground and strengthening dock infrastructure. Now, that's a question right there. So, if they're burying fuel tanks and they're doing all this underground, how do we know that this event today wasn't something else? And so people ask the question, like in Hawaii, they said, well, we got a false alarm in Hawaii. And how is this any different? Well, the difference between Hawaii and this was that was totally different. That was for an alert when an incoming missile is happening. And basically inside of those facilities, they have to pull a lever. 2 or 3 people have to pull a lever. This is different. Seismic events gets triggered off of shaking or something happening underneath the ground or even above sometimes. So that is not equated to the same thing. I've seen some people saying that, but just reading into, I'm gonna read deeper into what we were just talking about, but I'm gonna let you see this right here. This is what they reported. USGS says Nevada quake reports was false, blaming automatic system error. United States Geological Survey said Thursday's automatic earthquake detection system had erroneously sent out a report earlier in the day that a 5.9 magnitude tremor had struck Nevada, saying it was likely the first time USGS had issued a quake report and was completely bogus. Oh, yeah. So they're saying that's the first time they released a completely false report. See, this is where community comes in and is very important. If you're here and you're new here, just subscribe, stay tuned, because constantly, if we do feel something, we in the chat will say, hey, we felt something here. We saw something here. So I want to really look into the comments, and like, I'm so interested to see what was the anomalous things. Like the chat is like a freaking storybook after this is over with. Let's go back into this though, because now that we talked about them burying fuel tanks, which I didn't know about that, let's look at what else is going on. The strategy outlines plans for enhancement, including installing additional tsunami signage and incorporating tsunami modeling. And remember, this is Washington, right? So we don't know if they're doing that in Nevada. We're just saying that if they're getting prepared there, could they be getting prepared in other area like that? Read more. Incorporating tsunami modeling data into future Mariana marina projects. The port also aims to improve cooperation with Coast Guard to ensure the successful evacuation of key assets. So they're gonna basically, now they're alerting the Coast Guard. That tells you that key assets, what will those key assets be? Pretty sure probably like military bases, areas that's like government facilities. Obviously, they're not going to be looking at the homes of people. That's going to be all on you, but they're going to be getting probably the most essential stuff for economic situations. So we got to take that into account. This is just happening today. So let's read more into this, because it's really giving us some insights that I wasn't aware of. I'm reading this with you in live time. James Alton, Port Angeles Airport's an emergency manager, emphasized the strategy's significance, stating that tsunami maritime strategy represents significant advancements in protecting the people, infrastructure, and maritime assets. Defined USCG Captain Mark McDonald echoed this sentiment, highlighting the collaborative effort role in enhancing understanding and proactive risk reduction. So we have this scenario now where they know the tsunami alert system is not going to be active. So they're like already preparing their routes and the most strategic things that they feel would be necessary to move. So what does that tell us? It tells us, like, basically after that executive order for Cascadia subduction zone, they started to get a little bit more serious. Because they wasn't taking this as serious as they are now. Now with the magnetic stuff coming in and all that happening, here's the magnetic anomalies today right here. And apparently across the mid-Atlantic ridge, this could be an area that gets hit with an earthquake. And that's obviously off the East Coast. You got right in this area, you see South America, right there, or Latin America, where you want to call it, in Africa, right between that area. This is where the new subduction zone can be created. We were talking about how that part that we're looking at is going to go down in. So let's go back to it really quick. The part you're looking at, and we're not saying it's going down in right now, but we're saying like when this huge shift happened, this is the part where the plates are going to dive under and the water is going to go under, and apparently the continents in the most significant event will be pulled closer together. So basically, yeah, France and the East Coast, all this stuff, it will be slowly coming together. The question is though, like, what is going to trigger that event? It's pretty much wild to talk about, but that's something that's really already been talked about by scientists, and I've been looking into that for the longest. Outside of that, we have the solar situation, but we have South Carolina leaders urging winter weather preparedness as the state begins its readiness week. Because the governors are warning that winter storms can be just as dangerous as hurricanes. So this is something that they're looking at as well. We really have a heightened December. And just the other day, I was talking about how something just started with 3i Atlas that's no one can pretty much explain. And we go deeper into the involvement with the government, with the whole strategy, the plan. And then we talk about what could the magnetic and the atmospheric effects could be. So I'm going to read your comments here in a second. I see somebody talking about the blog, but check in the chat live right now. Something strange started with 3i Atlas and no one can explain it. If you leave this video, click that right away. Watch it because it's about survivability. Gary, I'm looking down the chat. It says Gailey Jarvis is where the blob kept appearing. So you're saying that location up top here is where that hot blob was at. Is that what you're saying? The hot blob, though, we know that once the professor said this, who've been studying seismic activity for a long time, over 30 plus years, once we continuously see the blob moving, how will we know that the East Coast will get hit with 5.0 quakes and above? So, and it'll be around that range somewhere. So if it starts to peak up and activity is higher, then we know that that hot blob, which is moving under the mantle, which is supposed to be a rock, and is making its movements in the Appalachian area is something else that we also take into account and look at. So if you're in that area and you want to report in something, you can get that in here right now because we're this big active community looking out for each other, and I'm really glad to be here to help you do that. Some shenanigans going around, Superlord Dude says. Mark says the code 50, the 53 codex has been embedded into everything. I have to look into that. I haven't looked into that. So yeah, we'll be looking deeper into all these events. But what we get out of today's event is that we need to be more connected as community, because when these alerts go out like this and people just say, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? You can come here right away, and then you'll see through the chat that we can confirm situations happening or not happening based on people's experiences. This is the most valuable thing that we can have right now. And this community, again, like we said, we're going to be tracking over the next few days. What are the anomalous magnetic situations happening? We're going to be tracking, okay, how is the West Coast interacting with the tides on the coast? We're going to be looking at the East Coast as well, checking activity there. And we always stay tuned with New Madrid Fault. So if you're newly tuned in here, we got so many videos covering all these topics that you need to go watch, because it's widely not getting out to the public. And like I said, 7+ years of doing this is not just the average person doing this. We do this because we see deeper into things and we look at what people say, and we can grab data and then find out what's really going on here through a couple analysis. We can't get answers right away. It takes some time. But once we do, we really kind of dive deeper into it so that you can have answers for your movements, your family. And this month, we should have like more of those safe zones coming out once the professor finishes that, because the safe zones collapsing anyway. Basically, they're vanishing. And this just came out from earth.com. They talked about how the safe zones on Earth are shifting. So we have to shift with it, and we got to figure out, okay, this area is not as safe as we thought. local residents are now telling us, because we thought Appalachians was one of the safer zones, and they were talking about how it's like getting more floods over there. And the Appalachians has the rising, the upwelling happening with the mountains pushing up from under the ground because of that mantle, and then that magma shift that's happening over there. So that's going to be a thing we're going to continue to look at too. Let's look at the chat real quick. What's going on, Shepard? Somebody says, look out for the heavenly kingdom rule coming. Somebody says, ever thought about getting a mohawk? I think I kind of had that years back, but this is the big thing. So again, check the chat right now. And it's funny how y'all talking about random stuff. And Something Strange just started a 3-hour atlas. We'll have it like right there after the video's over. If you don't see that though, just go into the chat, the top of the comment section. Appreciate all of you, and I like to see your report.